Hi guys, welcome to this new video. In today's video, we're gonna talk about Amazon FBA from Vietnam. So many people are sourcing products from China and many people are considering looking for the other place to source products in Asia. Today I have my buddy Vin. You have experience in e-commerce, drop shipping from Asia. We can dig into that subject. Vin, can you start by introducing your e-commerce journey in Asia?
Sure. So I started drop shipping and sourcing and manufacturing from Vietnam about 2015, so a good few years ago. And I started in China, but the whole idea is China is getting more expensive and there's more opportunities in Vietnam. So that's why I came to Vietnam.
You have experience in drop shipping as well as Amazon FBA. Can you mention a little bit the niche you were working on and where you were selling your products?
Sure. Maybe I'll start first by explaining the differences. So when people think of drop shipping, they think of sending products directly from China to the United States. But for me, drop shipping, the method that I did was working with manufacturers in North America, in the United States, importers. And so it's usually big items, whether furniture, whether it be electrical bikes or that type of thing, big fans. So that's the drop shipping that I did in the United States. And then for Amazon FBA, it was more of getting smaller home decor products that I would list on Amazon, source from Vietnam, and get it shipped to the United States into the Amazon warehouses.
Okay, so let me recap. Dropshipping, you can have the supplier that is directly shipping your products to the end customer. Obviously, you have to take care more of the sales. And if you are doing FBA, that is fulfilled by Amazon, you have your product that is listed on Amazon. You work with manufacturers and suppliers in Asia. For instance, in Vietnam here, we have a good niche to export product from, and then Amazon will be in charge of selling your products, right?
Yes, exactly. So pretty much Amazon will resell your product through their platform, whereas if you're drop shipping, you're more like an internet marketer. You're marketing specific brands, specific products on a Shopify e-commerce website. And then when you make a sale, you would send that sale to the manufacturer, and then that manufacturer would ship that product out on your behalf.
What are the main differences between manufacturing in China versus Vietnam?
Biggest difference I would say is that China is way ahead of the game. They do large quantities. They can do pretty much anything and everything from home decor, tools, furniture, clothing, and they're very well regarded in that type of manufacturing. Whereas Vietnam, their advantage is the lower cost in labor, but there's some pros and cons to that, with Vietnam being about 15 years behind.
So let's say if I am considering finding a cheaper product, I can look into sourcing in Vietnam, but because also the materials are usually imported from China, sometimes it's not necessarily worth it, right, to go and ask Vietnamese supplier to provide you quotations, because if they need the raw material coming from China, then finally it's better to work directly with Chinese manufacturers, right?
Yeah, sometimes that's the case. Most products that are made in Vietnam, even though the labor is cheaper, the material does come from China or other places. So whether it be sewing or tools or electronics, things like that. So, the cost is not always there that many people think or they perceive.
Interesting, Vin, but I guess there are still some niche and product categories that are very suitable for Vietnam. Can you mention 3 of them?
Yeah, so many people think, oh, Vietnam's gonna be cheaper, China's getting more expensive, let's just go to Vietnam. But that's not always the case because you can't get the same products in Vietnam. What Vietnam does well, I would say, is textiles like clothing, indoor, outdoor furniture, some pottery products, and rattan or wicker home decor. So furniture, chairs, tables.
Okay, we visited actually a factory with Vin. I will put that video here that you can have a look. We visited 3 suppliers. So there were a cashew processing factory, there were a furniture business manufacturing indoor and outdoor furniture, as well as rattan and wicker products that you can export from Vietnam to overseas. So you can check that video out. How should we get started actually? Let's say I want to start sourcing products from Vietnam. What's the few things I should get into to have some knowledge?
The best place to start is just by going to Alibaba.com, and then you can change the filter to Vietnam, and then you will see Vietnam countries. So one of the challenges about sourcing in Vietnam is there's no central database like Alibaba or anything like that. So it's going to be more of a challenge to find manufacturers, to connect with them, and to look at their products.
Okay, so you go on Alibaba.com, you tick the filter Vietnam, and then you can directly have a list of different manufacturers. I'm on the page, I'm finding those information.
We need to check the registered address, do the due diligence to be sure they are legit, they are still existing, they are not scammers. We need to also know how responsive the customer support, the feedback of the product by checking the reviews from the previous buyers and see if people are giving good feedbacks and good testimonials.
I think the most important is finding a reliable partner. So you maybe come across 5 or 10 different factories, but until you reach out and connect with them and they'll answer your questions, or you can call and talk to them, until you get to that stage, it's going to be really tough to vet that factory.
Yeah, because if we compare Vietnam and China, in Vietnam sometimes you can have some language barrier communicating with the staff here in Vietnam. You cannot even sometimes really check where are the products.
And finally, even if you reach that point of getting the right contact, getting the right factory that you can work with, sometimes it's not always the case that they will have a showroom in Vietnam. So if you physically come down to Vietnam, you may struggle to find them, you may struggle to book an appointment or to physically see the products that you want to buy.
You have those kind of big differences if you jump into Vietnamese sourcing and you are used to work with Chinese manufacturers?
Yes, I would say some of the challenges is the language barrier, whereas in China, they've got a generation that's quite sophisticated in English sales and an English sales department, whereas Vietnam, it's a little bit less. So that's one challenge. The second challenge is finding the manufacturer. So I have to Google, I have to look at different data, and then I have to search the particular company and then call them and reach them. And sometimes their website is quite old, it's not very sophisticated. Sometimes they don't have an English-speaking staff person. And like you mentioned, Guillaume, sometimes they don't have a proper showroom where you can look at products either. So there are some challenges when you're sourcing in Vietnam, definitely.
So besides getting to Alibaba.com, you have other alternatives to connect directly to local manufacturers and factory providing products from Vietnam. You can go to trade show that you have a bunch happening every year in Vietnam. For instance, the Viva Expo for furniture, the Saigon Tex for textile, the Lifestyle Vietnam Expo for home decor and handicraft, or the Vietnam Farm and Food Expo for agricultural products and processing food. Just check the next trade show that happen in your product category. Come to Vietnam and you can directly meet the local manufacturers and factories working in those industries. The other alternative you can find is to work with trading companies or sourcing agents. Those companies will take care of your product research. Either they already have a few categories and a few products that they can provide for you, or they can take care of the sourcing for you. Look for manufacturers fitting your product requirements, the price you want to get, and also dealing and representing yourself in Vietnam. And as soon as you find that right product and the right partner to help you doing your sourcing in Vietnam, you can work with a designer, so that company can be in charge of doing the private label of your product, so taking care of the logo, the marketing materials, the packaging, any added brochure, guide, or things that you want to add inside your packaging, and then you can have the product private label under your brand.
We do actually provide those kind of service, so if you guys are interested into sourcing product from Vietnam, check below in the description and we have the contact page to drop us a message. So you can either use sourcing agents or maybe hire freelancer, right, that can give some call, get for you the information, and then while you can head up to Vietnam, you can visit those manufacturers. Let's say I'm heading to Ho Chi Minh City. What's the place I should explore around Saigon to look for manufacturers?
So around the Ho Chi Minh City area, about 45 minutes or half hour outside is where lots of the factories are located in the tech or trading zone. So Bình Dương is one such suburb. There's also Long An and a couple other places nearby. So mostly if you're looking for a factory, you're going to have to visit outside of Saigon, and you would have to arrange a car, maybe one through Grab, or even hire a driver for the day, and that could be about $40–50 US for that service.
So you have your driver bringing you to the factories. I guess you need also a translator or someone who can know a little bit the products, right? To help you to negotiate the price, to help you to just understand how it works in Vietnam and how sometimes you need to build relationship first.
Before discussing and negotiating the price, the term and condition, the payment terms, the MOQ, and some additional shipping services. So we mentioned the manufacturing areas around Saigon. So we have Dong Nai, Long An, Long Tan, Bình Dương. So if someone wants manufacturing goods and products outside of those manufacturing areas, where are the other regions in Vietnam that are well known and popular for manufacturing products?
In the north around Hanoi area, the surrounding provinces, they do a lot of heavy duty manufacturing. Could be tarp, could be machinery, could be tools. And lots of those are joint ventures with South Korea, Japan, Taiwan. So we're looking at a bigger scale, electronics and things like that.
Okay, so now let's say you are considering coming right now in 2022 to Vietnam to source your product. What are still the challenges and things that are not solved yet in terms of supply chain, in terms of raising cost of commodities? What's the impact on Vietnam sourcing?
Yeah, just like everywhere else around the world, due to COVID, there were some supply chain issues, and that's really affected the shipping. So a container from Vietnam, where it used to be $4,000 or $5,000 US to ship to North America, to California, is now maybe sometimes double, sometimes even triple. So that cost, unfortunately, is there.
And because of the disturbance of the supply chain, there are also many workers that left the big cities to go back to their hometown. I know some of them are still not yet heading back to the manufacturing zone. Is it still something that is present right now in the mid of 2022?
My opinion, I would say it used to be a bigger problem maybe 6 months, 8 months ago, around the disruption in COVID in Vietnam that we saw directly in summer of 2021. But for the most part, I would say 80 and 90% is back to normal. A lot of the workers are back because they were enticed with more money. So they found out that when they went back to their hometown, they might not have to pay rent, they have their family, but they didn't have an income. So then the factories maybe entice them with a higher pay, a higher package to get them to come back. So I think we're seeing less of that disruption.
Vin, now if I want to get started, what would be from your experience the best product to source from Vietnam and in general to do FBA on Amazon?
I think the best strategy is to build your own brand on Amazon. And if you want to source from Vietnam, it's going to be more challenging, a little bit trickier. But if you put in the time and investment, I think you can come out ahead, because just the fact that there's less people in Vietnam sourcing. And then we talked about the challenges. So people, it's not as easy to source from Vietnam. But Vietnam, if you're in the wicker furniture, the rattan, outdoor, kind of the patio types of products with the cushion, the chairs, the tables, that type of wood type of outdoor furniture, that is what Vietnam does very, very well. Or if you're looking for like baby clothing or sometimes the textiles and sewing, I think that's where Vietnam, again, where you come out ahead. And then I've seen pottery, garden pottery types of products that are sold in Arizona, Florida, California. Big pottery that Vietnam does very, very well.
Interesting, Vin. And maybe one last thing that is still important for the people who want to jump into Amazon FBA from Vietnam. What about the MOQ? It's easy to get maybe 50 products, 100 products in China. How does it work for Vietnam?
Again, that's another issue. For me, I was lucky that I knew the factory, so they were able to work with me. And so they were able to send some samples, maybe a half container, maybe 50, 400 or quantities for me to test market. But yes, that's another issue because a lot of the factories in Vietnam will require you to buy at least a container of goods. So unless you know the product is that you can sell very well, that you know in and out, then it's going to be more challenging to get samples, whereas China does a lot better at that.
Thanks, Vin, for your insight and this update about how can you do FBA from Vietnam, source product here to sell overseas. If you enjoy this video, leave a thumbs up and check below in the description. I will leave some link, some resources, and if you want to get in touch with us, don't hesitate to check everything below. Thanks, Vin, again for this update.
Thanks,
and
Guillaume.
I see you in the next video. Bye-bye.
See you. Bye-bye.